I was at the edge of Kruger National Park in South Africa. An old male lion was walking slowly across the arid plains. He had once been the majestic king of a powerful pride, leading the group through many hunting seasons. But time and fierce battles had taken much of his strength. His once proud golden mane was now sparse, tangled, and dull. His eye sockets were sunken, giving him a weary look. His once sharp teeth had almost all fallen out. Only a few remained. His ribs stuck out beneath his rough skin, some areas starting to ulcerate. Each step grew heavier, staggering under the heat and through the dry grass. The old lion could no longer hunt enough to sustain his life. The younger, stronger members of the pride had driven him out, leaving him to live alone for many days. He wandered across the land he had once protected. Sometimes he let out a weak roar, but no reply ever came. Hungry and thirsty, he searched for small waterholes, hoping to find a bit of moisture. He had tried many times to stalk antelopes, but his teeth were no longer strong enough to bite. The scars crisscrossing his body told the story of countless battles. They once spoke of victories. Now they were only cruel reminders of nature's law of selection. Visitors had spotted his thin silhouette wandering in the distance. Someone had taken a few photos, which made their way to the rangers. Upon hearing the news, two South African staff members, Simba and Sifo, discussed it at length. They identified the location where the lion had recently been seen and then prepared to leave. They brought medical supplies, a tranquilizer gun, and some fresh meat. Kruger National Park was vast, and it took them a long time to find the lion. Both of them knew just how dangerous it could be to approach a wild lion. However, when they saw the exhausted old lion, they couldn't bring themselves to look away. The South African sun was blazing, and their shirts were soon drenched with sweat. Sifo carefully studied each of the lion's tracks in the dry sand, while Themba slowly scanned the area, searching for the former king's silhouette. At last, through the sparse trees, they spotted the lion sitting on the ground, its head hanging low. It was breathing heavily. Its eyes were half closed, and its body trembled with exhaustion. The two staff members stopped a few dozen meters away to observe. Themba raised the tranquilizer gun, ready in case the lion suddenly turned aggressive. But the lion's weakened appearance made Simba hesitate. Sifo gently placed a hand on his friend's shoulder and spoke softly. "He's too weak. Let's try another approach." Without hesitation, they decided to move in slowly, careful not to cause panic. The lion squinted slightly when it noticed the approaching figures, but it didn't move. Sifo began to speak in a low, soothing voice to help the animal get used to their presence. Simba approached slowly, holding out a piece of bright red meat in his hand. The lion let out a weak growl, seeming hesitant, but the smell of the meat awakened its survival instinct. It tried to stretch its neck, opened its mouth, and attempted to bite the piece of meat with what little strength it had left. Seeing that it was willing to eat, Sifo and Simba realized they had a chance to get closer. While the lion was chewing, Simba gently injected it with a supportive medication. The drug seemed to help it stay awake a little. Its hunger flared up suddenly. It devoured the meat as if it hadn't eaten in a month. Themba stepped back slightly, allowing the lion to finish the rest of the meat freely. Sifo remained alert, ready to intervene if anything went wrong. The lion gradually began to show trust, far less aggressive than others of its kind. After eating, it lifted its head and looked at the two men as if grateful. Sifo gave it a little more water to quench its thirst. After about 10 minutes of contact, the two staff members decided to begin the plan to move it. They went back to the vehicle to retrieve a special iron cage and placed it a few meters away from the lion. Normally, They would have used tranquilizers to ensure safety. But this time, they wanted to test its instincts. Simba approached slowly and carefully, holding a piece of meat to coax the lion forward. The animal slowly stood up, trembling and unsteady, completely drained of energy. Each step seemed like a tremendous effort for the old creature. When it got close to the cage, it turned its head toward Themba. For a moment, it was as if the lion was waiting for a signal. Themba gently stroked its head, as if to reassure it. Suddenly, the lion tried to crawl into the cage, prompting a deep sigh of relief from the two men. Sifo immediately closed the cage door and carefully checked the latch. The two men looked at each other and smiled, realizing that the mission was, at least for now, a success. The lion lay inside the cage, panting, no longer having the strength to resist. They quickly loaded the cage onto the truck, preparing to leave the arid plains. The short journey to the National Park Management Center began, carried out with care to avoid bumps that might hurt the lion further. The net covering the outside of the cage was carefully adjusted to protect it from the scorching sun. Many curious tourists watched with amazement as the vehicle transported the old lion. Sifo calmly explained that they were trying to save it from certain death. As they reached the facility gates, other staff members had already prepared an emergency care area. The lion was unloaded from the truck and placed in a separate cage, lined with straw and covered. Veterinarians immediately began examining him to assess his condition. They confirmed that he was suffering from severe malnutrition and had multiple skin lesions requiring care. He was given antibiotic injections, his wounds were treated, and he was administered painkillers. Another vet checked his teeth and found that none were really functional. Themba and Sifo stood silently nearby, heavy-hearted, but knowing they had just given the lion one final chance. The injured animal care area at Kruger National Park had a special enclosure where the lion could rest. Every morning, the staff changed his bandages and checked his skin to prevent infections. At noon, they fed him minced meat or soft, prepared food. The lion no longer had to worry about hunting or being chased by predators. He only needed to draw on his remaining strength to recover and live out the final days of his life in peace. Over the weeks, he slowly began to gain weight, and his fur looked a little smoother. Though he would never regain his former glory, he now had safety and care. Simba would sometimes sit by his cage, watching him and speaking to him softly. Sifo kept track of his food rations, adjusting his nutrition as needed. Sometimes, the lion would gaze off toward the horizon, as if remembering his former territory. Of course, he would never return to his pride, nor become king of the plains again. But the sadness of abandonment had faded, thanks to the human compassion he received at the center. Gradually, he became accustomed to the presence of Simba and Sifo, and no longer felt fear. Sometimes, he would even gently rub his head against their hands, a fragile gesture of trust. Life in the wild is harsh, but kindness can sometimes spark a small miracle. And so, in the final days of his life, the old lion lived surrounded by love and protection. He closed the chapter of his heroic journey in Kruger National Park. Dear friends, thank you for taking the time to follow this story. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel to support us.